What is up everybody, Swood here, and today I wanted to bring you a video on spellbait in Clash Royale near the end of 2017 and sort of how it's evolved as what it was really originally just as log bait and Three Musketeers, and how it's sort of changed into being also zap bait with the introduction of bats and skeleton barrel, and also poison bait with the new graveyard and night witch. So in the background I just have a quick game ladder match between Ace and Wings, two top players in the game. I just want to put that in the background for you guys. Cool video. For spellbait, like I said, originally it was just the log bait decks with the Princess, Goblin Gang, Goblin Barrel, where there's 3 loggable troops. You can only log 1. So if they log 1, obviously, which most people tended to log the Goblin Barrel, then it gave a lot of value to your Goblin Gang and Princess on defense. So it just made the deck a lot stronger, and people really never ran more than 1 counter, so it gave you gave up 1 card to make 2 other cards stronger, which was really good. And Three Musketeers is sort of the same way with Pump, Minion Horde, and the Three Musketeers. Most people only have 1 big spell. They can't spell like the Three Musketeers and the Pump, so they bait out the spell with the Pump, and then they play the Three Musketeers, stuff like that. So with the introduction of the new cards such as the Skeleton Barrel and the bats, this has really added an aspect of making zap bait a really viable thing. So if you, with the Skeleton Barrel, it goes to your tower, does 6-7 damage, not a big deal, but it spawns, I think it's 8 skeletons right on your tower, and the most efficient way to clean that up is zapping or logging it. But if you do zap or log it, then you won't have those cards for the Inferno Dragon or Princess or bats or whatever, so those cards will be getting more value just because they're forcing themselves to use their zap on the Skeleton Barrel because it's the biggest threat. So I think this is going to be a bigger theme we'll see in 2018 as players continue to get better in the game. They're going to continue to master these kind of strategies and try to get an advantage on enemies. See, if you see here, Wings has only the log. He also has Tornado, but if you were playing, say, a Princess and a Skeleton Barrel, he would have to log the Skeleton Barrel, and then he wouldn't be able to log your Princess. So that's just an example of how you can take advantage of the decks that people are playing. Most meta decks will just have the standard 1 big spell, 1 small spell. So decks that have like more than 1 bait for a small bait card or big bait card is going to be an advantage. I think something else that will come out from this is people running multiple small spells such as Zap Log, Arrows, or running multiple big spells like Rocket Poison or Poison Fireball, or maybe Fireball Mirror, stuff like that. This is something I was doing back in my How to Get Known video a week ago. I showed some matches from King of the Ring where I won. I played against Bay. I had Rocket Poison versus his 3 Musketeers. I was able to like rocket the Pump and then poison the Musketeers when he put them all in 1 lane because he thought I didn't have a spell. So stuff like that, it throws your opponent off because they're not used to it. They're used to just having 1 big spell, 1 small spell. So if you're able to sort of diversify from that, it will throw people off, which is really cool. Something else I wanted to talk about is the poison bait aspect of the game. Poison's probably the strongest spell in the game right now after the Rocket nerf. Rocket and Poison, for big spells, Rocket and Poison were the biggest, most used cards. All Rocket decks, or all Hog decks would have Rocket, but now a lot of them are switching to Poison just because Rocket doesn't do as much damage, and Poison is a better trade against Pump now. So the cards that are really affected by Poison are cards like Night Witch and Graveyard. They obviously, with the 3rd Graveyard, after we got it nerfed and then rebuffed, all the skeletons now from the Graveyard spawn on the outside, so it takes them 1 or 2, for the most part it takes them 1 or 2 seconds to get to the tower. So a defensive Poison is now the most consistent way to deny all damage, or deny most damage from a Graveyard. A few skeletons will still get hits, but it's a lot more consistent than like an Archer's or Baby Dragon stopping the Graveyard. So it's become the best counter to Graveyard. And for Night Witch behind like a Golem, if you have a standard Golem deck, which I believe I have right, no, I took it off, but the Golem deck typically has a pump and a night witch. You play your pump, they poison it, and then you play your golem and you follow it up with a night witch, and those bats keep spawning. Even after it's been nerfed twice, it's still deadly behind a golem or a giant, and if they can't defensive poison it, you've seen people like Oxlate in CCGS beat Wings with P.E.K.K.A. poison playing his golem night witch pump deck, because he was able to bait out the poison for the pump, and the night witch helped overwhelm the P.E.K.K.A. and the golem actually broke through, and he did that twice. So poison is really strong ties to night witch and graveyard with poison, and I think people are able to take advantage of this with the golem decks. Like I said, pump and night witch are both poison bait. If they don't even have poison, if they have a spell like rocket or fireball, then the night witch is just instantly really good. But even if they do have poison, you're able to tie it to the pump and force them to pump to poison that, as long as you can like catch their minor, assuming they're playing minor poison. And then with graveyard, if people are always gonna, if you know that people are always gonna play a defensive poison against your graveyard, I think you could take advantage of this by playing cards such as night witch, pump, or even like furnace or goblin hut. I think that's why these goblin hut decks are starting to become so popular, or even barbarian hut, is because typically someone would just poison it or fireball it, and then it'd be basically dead. You wouldn't have to worry about it. But I think this is a really strong combo with graveyard. If you have a goblin hut, they're not able to poison it, because if they do poison it, then they aren't able to poison your graveyard, and it's going to get a lot of damage. This is how most graveyard mirror matches, or like minor poison versus graveyard matches, are decided. If someone wastes a poison on offense, then they aren't able to defensive poison, and the graveyard will just take the game because of that mistake. So I think playing, like I said, graveyard with like a goblin hut or even a night witch or pump, I haven't thought of decks for that, but those are also good combinations. Or even playing like a graveyard deck with guards for a minor poison deck. They're going to want to poison on offense for your guards, but if they do that, then they're not going to be able to poison on defense. And unless they have another really hard counter like a Valkyrie, which even you still get damage, they're going to be losing because they're wasting their poison on offense. So graveyard is a really strong one that I think a lot of people underestimate how strong it ties into spellbait and how you can take advantage of that. So on the flip side of this, there's lots of different ways to take advantage of spellbait, since most people only play one big spell and one small spell, being with these decks that bait out poison, zap, or log, and also Three Musketeer, which just baits out any big spell. At the same time, you're able to counter that with playing multiple spells, or small spells like zap and log, or rocket and poison. Those are typically the most popular. A lot of people do zap log, but not a lot of people do the rocket poison. I think that's going to become a bigger thing in 2018 when people are starting to get better in the game. I started doing that a little bit, and I expect it to catch on. We'll see, though. Maybe even just like a poison mirror, because poison's so strong. But yeah, I think these decks, if you continue to see people who are going to be playing decks with like the skeleton barrel and bats, then having a deck with like zap and log is good. You can zap the bats and you can log the skeleton barrel. And if you also have like a poison or whatever, poison, zap, log, you can like log the skeleton barrel, poison the bats, and then zap their inferno dragon to let your giant get hit, or your golem, or whatever you're playing, hog rider. So I think if you're able to identify, these are for the competitive players in the game, or even just if these bait decks become really popular, like log bait was, if you're able to play a deck that has 3 spells instead of 2, like you have a second small spell or you have a second big spell, I think this is really going to help players get a lot of wins in 2018. People are going to be trying to bait out your spell, but if you have multiple spells, they can't really bait them out. They're just constantly giving you good value. So this is why I've played decks like Rocket Poison, hoping to run into players with like 3 Musketeers, because they have 3 Musketeers, Pump, and Minion Horde, or decks with like Expo and Pump, or Golem and Night Witch. Those decks are all 3 that Rocket and Poison does really well. So these are the main points about the spellbait video. I think this is going to be a really big trend in 2018, and hopefully you guys can take advantage of it. I'm going to be bringing more decks with these kind of spellbaity aspects, because they're really strong against casual players or even competitive players who aren't caught up with the meta and what's going on. So hope you guys enjoy this. Hope you had a good Christmas. I did, enjoying the break, but back to videos now, so have a good day, guys.